I grew up in a small town in Maryland, in a rural area of the state, and we were the only Greeks in town. We ran this restaurant, or one of a handful of Greeks, I guess. So I grew up, in a sense, in a different environment or context than a lot of Greek Americans who grew up in urban areas where there was more of a community. I mean, the nearest Greek Orthodox church to where we lived was 100 miles away. And so maybe once a month, you know, my mother would pack us all into the car. We would drive 100 miles in order to go to church. Well, my father came at 15, but he became fluent in English. And you know these stories they tell about the restaurant owner who would then go home and read Plato and Aristotle. Well, my father actually did that. I mean, he had these books at home of the classics, and he knew that. And actually, a lot of that generation of Greeks had that dimension to them. They had certain values within their own culture that were important to succeeding in American society. They had strong family ties, which created a strong support system, of a fierce belief in education. I remember once when I was in high school and I sort of said to my father, well, I'm not going to go to college. He rarely would get angry with me, but he sort of shook me and he said, you're going to go to college. He says, you may grow up to be a good for nothing, but you're going to be an educated good for nothing. So there was this fierce commitment to education. Hard work, which has characterized our community, I think, in this country. And of course, a strong religious faith, because the church has played, I think, an important role.
My father, he don't have the money to put me in a school over Greece, all right, to do something very easy, more easy. So I'm working very hard.
Όταν γίνηκε δικηγόρος η αδελφή μου, εδώ στο Baltimore, ήταν 12 γυναίκες δικηγόροι. Μόνο 12, back in 1960. Ο παππούς μου ήταν δικηγόρος και ο great-grandfather ήταν δικηγόρος στην Ελλάδα. Ο πάππους μου είχε διώξει το Τούρκο στα Δωδεκάνησα. Τον έβαλε στη βάρκα, του είπε να φύγει και τον έφερανε στη Κωνσταντινούπολη. Ο μεγάλος Τούρκος και they were going to kill him. But when he spoke to him, it's a true story. Τον άφησε και γύρισε. He went back to the Dodekanisha and he became sort of an official for the Carpathians, Roditis and so on with the Turks.
I was the first Greek American ever elected to the United States Senate. Subsequently, Paul Tsongas came to the Senate and Olympia Snow came to the Senate, and Olympia still serves in the United States Senate. Of course, John Bradamus was the real path breaker for us because he was elected in 1958 to the House of Representatives. And that was a real breakthrough for our community. Subsequently, others followed him into the House, and I was one who came into the House, and I was elected in 1970. That was difficult as far as dealing with the Greek issues, because Greece at the time was in the control of the junta, and I was very much opposed to the junta. In fact, neither Bradamus or I would visit Greece during the time of the junta. We did all we could to oppose it here, including opposing American aid, military aid for Greece, because we thought it would go to strengthen the kernels and increase their control over the country.
The statistic is that of all the ethnic groups in this country, we have the highest percentage where in one generation you have young people graduating from college. In other words, we have the first generation, and then immediately thereafter their children attain a college education, the highest percentage of any ethnic group. Greeks have a certain sense of competition, but they also perceived very quickly that education was the ladder to greater opportunity. So, you know, my grandfather who came here was not a formally educated man, but was a very smart man. And while he was working in a restaurant, he perceived immediately that the best opportunities in America would come if you could get a good education. So that became then the premium for him in terms of his children. And I think that's why we moved so quickly up the ranks, because we recognized that America was a place where if you applied yourself, if you worked hard, and you seized on educational opportunity and always preserved that drive for excellence, that you could achieve anything.
This is considered the gateway to Greektown from downtown Baltimore. What we have here was a large white wall, and the city, through an office called the Baltimore Office of Promotion and Arts, gave money to do the largest mural in Baltimore's history. Well, the purpose of rejuvenating the area is multifaceted. You can look at it as an economic development initiative to bring money back into the city, but you can also look at it as to bring people, homeowners, back into the community, to bring pride back into the community. It's not necessarily that it's gone, but this effort is to strengthen that existing pride. We decided, they formed the committee, and we decided to have a parade that would incorporate all the cultures of Southeast Baltimore, because we have a huge mix of Italians, Polish, Greek, Latino, African American. But when you enter the Greektown side, you're going to see a heavy artistic Greek influence. I remember, I'm 28 years old. I was born in 1981, so when my parents moved out, I was 4 or 5 years old. I went to the county, so I would come every weekend. I do remember it as a lot of Greek ladies washing their steps. They still do, taking pride washing their marble steps. I noticed a lot of the men outside taking care of their lawns. I noticed a lot of people out. I noticed that the Greeks who live in their house take very good care of their properties, very good care. And we still have a strong concentration of Greeks in Greektown. Now it's more on the southeast portion, and you can see, I think that's the strongest portion. It's because of all the Aya and the Bapu that sit there and they scrub the steps and they take care of the garden. It's pride. They have a lot of pride in the community. What we're hoping now is to bring that same pride to not just the young Greeks who move back in, but to the whites, the Latinos, the African Americans who are in the community. And it's a contagious feeling. The element when we were in our height, I think it's still there. I think there's still a good portion of it. It's not as vibrant as it used to be as far as when Greeks were here. But again, it's never too late to bring it back. The majority of Greektown in the 1950s and 60s, it was originally Polish and German. It was the Greeks that migrated I'd say in the 30s and 40s through jobs through the port of Baltimore, and a lot of them started buying homes here. So during the 50s and 60s and 70s it was very, very Greek. It was only until I'd say the 1980s, the second generation, the sons of the immigrants who moved over, moved out to the county. I'm the offspring of that second generation. I'm the third generation who moved out to the county. Now the thing about the Greeks is that they never sell any property. They kept the property here. So that's a good thing and a bad thing. Good because they keep it, they take pride, you know the owners, but it's not as good when you don't have home ownership. So I think we went through, the trouble that we went through was normally with lack of homeowners. And that was probably in the late 80s, 90s, when it wasn't at its prime. Now, since our office got involved, you're seeing a lot of people move back into the neighborhood. I'm an example of that. I'm a third generation Greek that moved back in, and my vision is to help bring them together and kind of capitalize on that movement of young people coming in.
I represented unions because I thought the unions were on the right track and I wanted to be part of that move. Through strong unionism in America, that was how the workers in America, the broader group of Americans, got economic fairness. Only that way, through the unions. They were the soldiers in the front, the union people. So I represented the steel workers, I represented the building and construction workers, and retail workers, and so on. I was always concerned about the fact that in America, despite all of the claims that we make as a country, that the opportunities for Americans, while plenty, were always very difficult. Well, they weren't easy. You had to work hard. You had to work too many hours. You didn't get paid enough money. So my sympathy was with the working person. Without the legal system that we have, and free practicing lawyers, free meaning lawyers who can choose to take any case that they feel they want to litigate, that is one of the best protections that any citizen of any country can have, and I'm pleased that we have that in the United States. First, we put up all the expenses to litigate the case because the average person couldn't possibly afford to try a case like this because of the tremendous expense in pulling it all together. You have to have experts and so on. The answer is it's a contingency fee case. And that's a big thing in this country, which allows all Americans to have access to lawyers of strong abilities without having to somehow pay them by the hour. That's in America. You can't do that in England and most of the European countries. The powers that be don't want that. They don't want that to happen because if you give every average person a chance to be represented by a competent lawyer when somebody's done them something wrong, then you're going to empower the people. And there's a strong effort in the United States today to curtail lawyers who work like I do with the public. I don't represent any companies. Never represented a company in my life. Not interested. I represent people.
Princeton was trying to reach out and take in more public high school students. And so I applied, they took me and they gave me financial aid that made it possible to go, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to go. And then while I was at Princeton, I won the Rhodes Scholarship and to study at Oxford. So I went to England and to Oxford University, and that's where I met my wife, who's English and was a student at Oxford University. My Greek's not that good, etsi. I learned what little Greek I know, I learned from my mother, essentially, who spoke Greek to us at home. And I had no formal schooling in Greek. Unlike my children, all of whom have been took Greek at the university level. In fact, they all went to Princeton, and there's a very good modern Greek studies program. Well, they can read and write ancient Greek in part because their mother was a teacher of ancient Greek, and they can read and write modern Greek because they took this Greek studies program at Princeton.
I certainly feel like my time in Greece helped to strengthen my connection to my Greek heritage. And it helped in terms of solidifying my identity as an individual, as a person. Greek Americans have assimilated very well in this country, you know, and many would argue they have their hands full just attending to the things that are right here in front of them. On the other hand, there are very few Greeks you talk to who have the opportunity to go back to Greece and have seized that, who don't come away from it with this real renewal of who they are.
For any immigrant group, the pressure on them is to succeed in the country to which they've gone. So, and to become part of that country, and there's a lot of pressure in America to do that. And the earlier generations, of course, you had some Greek households where they wouldn't speak Greek in the household because they wanted everyone to speak English and become American. It's a challenge to maintain the ties. I mean, people have very busy lives and a lot of pressure. So if you want to be a good doctor, you got to work very hard at being a good doctor or a good lawyer or a good businessman. So you have to add a whole dimension to your life if you're going to sort of try to maintain these ties. And of course, in many families, they don't have relatives any longer in Greece.
Among all the ethnic groups in the United States, the Greeks have one of the highest rates of return to the home country. I remember when I was there in 1985, I was on a Fulbright. My grandmother came over to visit, and we were walking through the village, and this is the village of Elika, which is in the southern Peloponnese near Monovasia. She had not been there at that point for about 30 years, and she became quite agitated, and finally said, there's something missing. We were in a part of the village. She says, there used to be, when I was a little girl, so she was remembering now 70 years early, she said, there used to be there was an olive tree over here, and it's not there anymore. And so she started asking around, and sure enough, they said, oh yeah, that tree was there, but it burned down, you know, a few years prior. But that's how intense her relationship was, her connection to the physical property, the land there in Greece. And I think many Greeks have this same feeling. So when we go back, there's this sense of renewal that you get.
Whenever community goes through any downtimes, whenever there's more and more rentals opposed to home ownership, I think you see and less community involvement. I think the criminals see that, and they sense that it's a place where they can do their business. They stay away from very vibrant communities of people that are very involved. So now that we have a lot of people that watch out, that call my office constantly, call the police constantly, it's not profitable to be a criminal, you know, in this community. My office was formed for safety reasons. Back when, you know, people were leaving, that's when we had more rentals, and that's when crime rose. So the church and a lot of people with a vested interest in the community got together and wanted to form a very strong organization. And they did, and they incorporated this organization, aside from a community group. So they brought in somebody, a Greek man who was brought up here, who rose the ranks from police cadet all the way up to police commissioner, the acting police commissioner. And so who better to target the crime? He became the executive director, my boss, my mentor. His name was John Gavrilis. And Mr. Gavrilis went around and he took 70 problem homes, took them down to 7. I mean, that's it. I mean, he cleaned the place up. Nobody made a move. The word was out that it was somebody's full-time job here was to focus on the safety of the community. So once that happened, what do you do next? That's when we started focusing on more economic development initiatives, bringing people, community residents involved, focusing on cleanliness. I mean, this is Baltimore. Baltimore is a tough city to keep clean.
And he'll take the ball to right field. Nick Markakis, long way to go. Diving and makes an outstanding catch. Right field, Nick Markakis coming.
Oh my God, 1993, I bought the Orioles. What had happened was the team had been, was owned by a very wealthy gentleman whose fortunes went very bad. And he lost all of his assets. And the key asset that he had was the Orioles.
That one in the air to right field. That is deep. Nick Markakis going back.
Our team ended up in the bankruptcy of this individual. We believed that if someone came in from out of town, which was quite possible, that they would buy the team and move it to another place in the country. So I put a group together and we put the money up and we traveled to New York, and at the auction we were the successful bidder. Every kid in America plays baseball at one time or another, and I did. You grow up with a glove and a bat and you play the game. Just like in Europe, everybody kicks a soccer ball around. Obviously, the idea of owning a Major League Baseball team in America, of which there are only 30, the whole country, and being the owner, that had a lot of glamour. So we all have an ego, you know, and if you're a Greek, you definitely have an ego. So I don't know what the Greek personality is like, but I can say mine, I don't want to wait. I want to do it now, whatever it is I'm going to do. I'm not offering that as a positive. That's probably a negative. But yeah, I ran for mayor with an integrated ticket, and my God, I hate this, 40 years ago. And that was considered, around here in particular, because this state, while this state, when the issue of slavery or abolition of slavery was considered, this state was called a free state. But that was really more in name only because the populace back then was more Southern-like, Southern-minded. So anyway, when I ran for mayor with an integrated ticket, everybody was astonished.
I think the U.S. made a bad policy mistake with respect to Greece in not being tougher on the junta. So I think there are legitimate reasons for Greeks to be resentful of American policy, but I also think there is an element in Greek thinking that sort of, in an unthinking way, sort of wants to blame the U.S. for everything that goes wrong. There's also a tendency to think that the U.S. can sort of fix any problem, and that's far from an accurate perception of the real world as well.
I believe the American government's policy toward Greece, which has stood by the so-called Allies way back in the First World War and the Second World War and so on, is, how would you put it, not just disappointing, but literally outrageous, because the Greeks have always been side by side with the American government. And unfortunately, our foreign policy always favors interests that are not consistent with Greek interests, as in the matter of Cyprus. I disagree with those policies, but unfortunately, we Greeks in America have never been able to get strong enough politically to influence America's foreign policy. Those who control American foreign policy, because of their own bias and interest, usually put the United States on the wrong side of international issues.
The homogeneity gives you an element that sort of knows what's happening in the country, follows it closely. If you don't have that, then who has an influence? And maybe the oil companies would have a big influence on foreign policy in certain places where they have oil interests. In Central America, maybe the banana companies have a big influence. So all of these elements try to influence foreign policy, and the benefit of having an homogeneity is that they know what's happening in the country. Some foreign policy advisors just look at the map and they say, well, there's Turkey, it's a big country, it's got a lot of people, it's supposedly going to be the bridge to the Muslim world and so forth and so on. And I don't deny any of that, but also, you know, I think a guiding aspect of your foreign policy ought to be the values and principles that are. When we urge these policy positions, when Greece and Turkey are in dispute, we've always done it as being consistent with American values and principles. So we get occasionally accused, you know, in the press here of being, quote, a Greek lobby. And my response to that always has been, I said, no, we're an American lobby for principles and values that are important to American foreign policy. And those are the principles and values that are being violated by Turkish aggression in Cyprus, or their denial of religious freedom to the Patriarch, or aggressive actions in the Aegean. And those are the things that need to be corrected.
Markaki, he's terrific. He's terrific. He's a fine young fellow. He actually went to the Olympics and played. When you host the Olympic Games, the host country has to have a team at every sport. And of course, they didn't have a baseball team. So we got the word that they needed somebody to do that, and we put it together. And Markaki was on that team, and he hit and pitched in the game.
Nobody up in the bullpen. Markakis takes it to right field. That is back. That is way back at the wall. Goodbye. Home run. Nick Markakis.
They're tremendously talented people in Greece. And if they can fully harness that talent, I think they could be even though they're a country of 10, 11 million people, so the population's not, but they could play a very significant and substantial role in the EU, and in effect significantly enhance their influence in that way. They played an important role with China on the Olympics, having staged a very successful Olympics, which I thought was very important for Greece. They accomplished that, and they did it in a very impressive way. I thought they would make it because, well, I'll tell you a story. when I was going through school, if the exams had been moved up 24 hours earlier than they were scheduled for, I would have failed every exam, because I needed every minute to prepare for the exam. As it was, I did very well on all these exams. So I had some personal knowledge of sort of doing things at the last minute, and I figured that's what the Greeks were going to do, and that's what they did, and they staged a tremendous Olympics. They really did. It was very important for Greece that they do that.
I think our younger people have a stronger comprehension of what Greece today is really like. And getting those two groups to have more contact with each other. What comes to mind was the opening presentation in the Olympics, the Greek Olympics. Just the panorama of what that presentation was. I was astonished at the sophistication of that presentation, because I thought Greece would have a nice opening and come out with the fustaneles and all the rest of that. But what you did, what was done in that opening, it was just magnificent. I think we do have some old notions about Greece, but that's my generation. If you're talking about a 25-year-old Greek American, I think I hope most of them see Greece as it is presently today. But the negative would be that economically, and we touched on that a while ago, it seems like the Greek people, particularly the youth, are stifled because of an economy that doesn't provide for them.
As you can see, that sign there, it's a new sign that my office had created to show the gateway into the community. What you're looking at is a city-owned parking lot with one of our local banks that has a lot of Greek bank tellers, and behind it is a bus station. Totally, it's about 18 acres worth of property. What I'm doing right now is working with developers on moving the whole bus station to behind the hospital and redeveloping that into a Greek-themed business district. What'll be beautiful about it is going to be architecturally Greek themed. It's going to look like Mykonos or Santorini when you drive by. It'll have a white stucco with the blue top awnings, and you'll have nice high quality shops and restaurants on the corners, and it'll be layered. You'll have homes on the top and you have shops on the bottom. The idea is, given the proximity to Johns Hopkins Bayview, which is very, very, very prominent institution in the United States and is growing a lot. It's constantly growing. It's a destination for some of the most brilliant minds, a lot of Greek doctors here actually, but they don't have, let's say, young, hip place to go. The idea is it's so close we can give them that here. And so not only would it be a destination for everybody in the community and outside, but people who work at Johns Hopkins may be interested in living here because of everything, you know, that it can offer. Okay, so this is the Platia. This is a project about 8 years in the making. It's almost finished. Within the next year, they're going to be opening it up. This is in the heart of Greektown. This is the multicultural center. The St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church got some funding from the state, from some of our rich Greek businessmen, And the idea was to have a place where we can have events, baptisms, weddings, multicultural events, concerts, just things to celebrate the community. And this was kind of like the benchmark, the first project major that the Greeks have done. And that, again, that was about 8 years ago. So this kind of spawned a lot of other interest throughout the community.
The fact that so many Greek Americans can't speak Greek, I think it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. The big law says it's not spoken at home, because that's where you really learn the language. And I have to confess that I'm not too optimistic. America, as has been said, is the great melting pot. And while that's a tired phrase, unfortunately, it's real. Here, everyone becomes assimilated in 1 or 2 generations. It is a rare group that can retain its traditions, its religion, and so on. The stronger the religion, the more it holds the youth, and then the longer the identity will last. Can it last in America indefinitely? No. Lucky if it lasts 3 generations.
People say, well, the Jewish community does it differently. Well, not all that differently. I mean, the rabbis play an important role in the Jewish community, a very important role. Of course, the numbers in that community are much, much larger than the numbers in the Greek community. We have an influence probably beyond our numbers. I think the community has done a good job, all things considered, and given its size in this country, you know, we're less than 1% of the population of the United States. It was enormously important, I think, in my family, that while my wife was not Greek in her own heritage, she was very Greek in terms of her education. It also turned out that she looked very Greek, so people never believed when they met Christine that she wasn't Greek, particularly once they talked with her a bit and came to understand how deeply how much she knew and understood.
Well, I believe there's room for continued diversity and differentiation of identity, and I think that that's healthy. We don't want to ever get to everybody's exactly the same. We want to get, and that's why the constant search has to be to balance preserving your own identity and traditions while honoring those of others. And I think we can do that. Within your own family, you are realizing the potential or acting out on the diversity aspiration or promise of this country. In my own family, similar thing. My wife and I each have a very deep respect and admiration for the traditions that the other brings, which you see both in the Jewish community and the Greek community. The United States has a tremendous opportunity to showcase how that can be done, because we have so many different traditions that are being brought into this ferment here.
The marriages now are a large percentage of mixed marriages. And if that happens over generations, you know, unless you work hard at it, you're probably going to lose some of your connection and some of your ties. But on the other hand, you know, as we interact with other families that are non-Greek, many of them are drawn into the Greek tradition. So it works both ways. Some of our people move away, but then we bring other people in. And that's part of the process of America, though, I have to say. I mean, it's one of the great strengths of America, this diversity, and how we keep remaking ourselves as a country.
I'd like to bring back the village feel of the community, not because I'm just trying to bring it back to the 60s and 70s and 80s. It's because it's people like that, not just the Greeks. People like to live in an area that has a theme or a feel to it, an old world feel. And I strongly believe, and that's why our city loves this so much, because it's got a theme to it. They can advertise it. It's a destination. You're coming to Greektown. It's like a Greek village. You know, you go have the shops. It's like you're walking through Athens, Greece. People are willing to spend money in a place like that. It separates it from other neighborhoods in Baltimore. It makes it very unique. So, is it realistic to recreate this into a Greek village? No, probably not. But there's a way to stylistically tie it all together while not excluding, you know, any other ethnicity. Of course, I'm very sensitive to make sure that we're not going to borderline tacky, where it's artistic. We want it to be, we don't want big Byzantine columns, something that people stereotype as the Greek culture. Well, what I like about the plans for the development at the bus depot, it's a Mediterranean feel. It's a Greek architecture feel where you feel like you're driving through an island. You're not being slapped in the face by, you know, a guy holding gyro. You know, it's not like, you know, a lot of times with our Greek festivals, we try to capitalize on the oppa and the souvlaki and everything that people know is very Greek. But there's a lot of other tasteful ways to go about to showcase the Greek culture.
We lived there. I lived there with my dad, mother, and my sisters. It was just called Highlandtown then. It wasn't called Greektown. But it was a focal point for the Greek, a lot of people who were coming into the city. As the years have gone by, it deteriorated to a point, but it's come back, and more Greek immigrants have come, and that's why they called it Greektown. I don't know that I like the name, I'll tell you that. You know, we don't call other sections of the city Jewtown or Irish town or German town and so on. I think it has to me, a sound which is, it's almost a misuse of the word. To say Greek is to say, not Greek about a town, to say Greek about philosophy, about sculpture, about Aristotle, about Plato and the rest of it. To me, that's Greek. Greek town, anyway, it's okay. That's just a little harsh on the ear.
Each family and each generation will have to answer that for themselves. Because to sustain these ties and to know this heritage, you have to add an extra dimension on top of all the other demands that the society is making upon you. Be prepared to invest the time and effort and energy that's required to do this, over and above what you have to do just to function in a normal way in the society.
When you're in a country with so many ethnic groups, okay? United States, you have all kinds of nationalities and so on. It's almost like that's where you take a Greek and put them. I believe in everybody together. I believe that there's not one section where a given population or ethnic group is. You don't designate people by descent, and you don't designate geographical areas by ethnic identification. That almost sounds like that's where you belong. I don't want to live in Greektown. I want to live in any town where everybody's welcome. That's sort of an American indoctrination that we get. We're not always true to it, but many times I think it comes to the front.
I like the term Greektown, and I think it might be more, again, I'm a third generation Greek, so this gives not only me identity, but it gives, let's say, every other ethnicity that's here an identity. Oh, I live in Greektown. Oh, you live in Greektown. They know where it is. It's not an address. would you rather live in Southeast Baltimore or would you rather live in Greektown? It's got more of a charm to it. That's why they call this city Charm City. I think it's charming that it's Greektown. Mr. Angelos grew up with all of the other Greeks, and they all have all prospered. So, you know, he's lived through it. It's different for us. It's charming. It's nice to see that we can talk about Mr. Angelos. Oh, he grew up in this area. All the other, you know, influential Greeks. So I'm proud to be part of that.
Well, we have the expression sta notera, right? So this notion that you can always strive for something higher. Our community should have three aspirations. The first is to assure individual success, and in that regard, we've excelled. There's no question. It's important then that we take the assets that we've accumulated that way, and we channel them into keeping our community strong. But I think there's a third aspiration that's appropriate, and that is when a community, an ethnic community with a strong sense of self and tradition like we have, reaches a point of maturity, as I believe we have, and confidence, we need to step back and begin to think more of our contribution to the larger society. Get to a point where potentially our community can be known as one that gives back, so that the larger society perceives the Greek American community as, oh yes, Greek Americans, if you come into any town or any city and you ask where's the Greek American community, you say, well, you know, look in the hospitals for the doctors, look in the schools for the teachers. If you look for the business people, they serve on the boards of the local museum or the local hospital or whatever it is, because they give back.
I don't think this challenge for the community should be seen as a burden moving forward. It needs to be seen as a wonderful opportunity. And to the extent that the community has been freed from the sort of prejudice we encountered in the past, or some of the more difficult economic circumstances we confronted, to that extent we've been sort of liberated from those pressures. And that gives us the opportunity to meet this challenge. And it could be very exciting and very significant. Because I think our community has a real role to play in this country. If we know our own heritage, and if we're in a position to help transmit that heritage, I think we're doing an important service for America. And in a broad sense, I don't want to get carried away with this, but in a broad sense, since America plays such a significant role in the world, you know, we have an opportunity to make a contribution to the world. Greece has that contribution, possibility of making that contribution as well, but they're not as large and populous a country. So the challenge, in a sense, is it's for all of us.